what you know about God unless you went through what you went through. You can't testify that he's a provider unless you ran out of some stuff and needed him to provide it. You don't know nothing about him being a doctor until you've been flat on your back sick. You don't know what it is to be a friend until all your other friends have walked away. You don't know what it is to be a battle axe in the time of battle until you had some wars to fight. Is there anybody here that can testify? I wouldn't know what I know until I went through what I went through. Hallelujah. John chapter 11, beginning with verse number 17. There's a very powerful story that is contained in all 45 verses of John chapter 11, but I want to begin with verse 17 so as to give context, and I promise you I will preach the entire story, but I want to begin with verse number 17, and I'll end at verse number 27. John chapter 11 and 17. Then when Jesus came, he found that he, Lazarus, had lain in the grave 4 days already. Now Bethany was nigh unto Jerusalem, about 15 furlongs off. And many of the Jews came to Martha and Mary to comfort them concerning their brother. Then Martha, as soon as she heard that Jesus was coming, went and met him, but Mary sat still in the house. Then said Martha unto Jesus, Lord, if thou hadst been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now, whatsoever thou wilt ask of God, God will give it to thee. Jesus said unto her, Thy brother shall rise again. And Martha said unto him, I know that he shall rise again in the resurrection at the last day. But Jesus said unto her, I am the resurrection and the life. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. And whosoever liveth and believeth in me shall never die. And then he asked her, Believest thou this? And she said unto him, Yea, Lord, I believe that thou art the Christ, the Son of God, which should come into the world. We are attempting to finish this series, I Am Jesus in his own words, and I want to announce to you today that it's time to believe. On your way to your seat, encourage that neighbor and tell them it's time to believe. What did they say? It's time to believe. It's time to believe. Over the past few days, I've had the opportunity to kind of sit back and just reflect on whatever portion of my 35 years that I can recall. And in thinking back and reflecting, I've come to realize recently that my plan for life is not always the plan that God wills for me. In other words, at every age or stage in this congregation, we have all in some way, shape, or form crafted out a plan where you plan to be by this time in your life. You have goals, you have dreams, you have aspirations, and so many of us have thought about them. We've written them down, we've reflected on them, and we've set time-sensitive deadlines when it comes to our plan in life. But along with that reflection and along with those plans comes a very chilling reality check that God's ways are not my ways. In other words, what I plan is not always what God planned. What I want is not always what he wants for me. And I'm learning as I go through life and as I matriculate in the school of hard knocks, I'm here to tell you that sometimes life will present you with some curves. Life will present you with some bumps. Life will present you with some situations that will cause you to question everything you planned, everything you wrote down, and it reminds you that you're not in charge. I know this is the younger crowd, but can anybody here testify? I've been around long enough to know that God's ways are not my ways. Somebody said that they graduated finally by the grace of God. Your plan was to graduate at that time, but God said, no, you're going to wait until this time because there are some lessons that you have to learn in the meantime. There's some growing personally, spiritually that you have to go through in the meantime. And so in learning that you are not in charge, you learn how to submit your will to the will of God. I realize that on some level, all of you embrace that truth that God's ways are not your ways, but it's very easy to announce it, but very difficult to accept it. Have I got a witness here? You've heard it said over and over again. God's ways is not my way. His thoughts are higher than my thoughts. Before I was formed, God already knew my destiny. It's easy to announce it, but it's hard to accept that. Especially when you got plans, especially when you told God you need it by Friday, talk to me here, especially when you told God that you need it this way and in this manner and you're looking for him to do it. But what do you do when Jesus does not speak the way you want him to speak? What do you do when Jesus does not respond to your request? What do you do when he does not come as soon as you call? What do you do when God does not perform according to your petition? What you find in the words of this text is a very powerful narrative that takes about 45 verses for you to get the miracle. Now, the crowd that I'm preaching to at the moment is not very interested in long stories. You may as well go ahead and keep it real. I'm not talking about even in the Bible. I'm talking about in your own life. You want to see how you coming out. Somebody ought to be honest here. You don't like no long drawn out stories, and you don't like 45 verses to get to the end. You don't like books. You like brochures. The brochure just give me the highlight. The brochure just tell me how I'm coming out. Just give me what I need to get my shout on before Sunday church ends. But God told me to tell you, sometimes you got to read through them verses. You don't have the benefit of fast forward. You don't have the benefit of skipping to the end. There are some things in life where you got to read all the verses to get through what you got to get from God. Is there anybody here that can testify your life ain't a brochure? It's a book. Fact about it, don't even judge the book by its cover. You better read the beginning, you better read the middle, you better read the end, and then you still need to ask me because you don't know what you're reading. Life will take you the long way. And sometimes you have to believe God even when God doesn't respond to your requests. Can I teach before I preach here? Verse 1 of chapter 11 says that there was a man named Lazarus who was sick. Now, what you need to know is that Lazarus was the brother of two soul sisters named Mary and Martha. You may remember Mary from a previous encounter with Jesus. She was the same Mary, not to be confused with Mary, the mother of Jesus, but she was the Mary that showed up one day to the Pharisees' house, somewhere about Luke chapter 7, verse number 37, if you're taking notes. She showed up to the Pharisees' house one day because Jesus was invited to dinner, and she crept up behind Jesus, fell on her knees, began to cry, began to worship, began to literally anoint his feet and wipe it up with her hair. And when the Pharisees saw that this woman was with Jesus, they began to criticize Jesus because of her being there. If he really was a man of God, he wouldn't be dealing with her. If he really was a prophet, he wouldn't be dealing with this woman. She's a hood rat. I'm sorry to say it that way. She's a woman of the streets. She's a woman of the night. If Jesus really was from God, he wouldn't be fooling with her. Come here. Aren't you glad that you serve a God that will stand up for you when you bow down to him? Jesus said, you leave that woman alone. She has need of me. She taking better care of me than some of y'all who claim that you know me. Because when God has been gracious to you, I wish I had some help here. When God has given you mercy, you come bowing down. And when you bow down, he stands up for you. I don't know who the 75 people are that I'm talking to, but you didn't come here this morning to see these folks sitting on your row. You didn't come all the way to church to look important. No, you came to see Jesus. And it don't matter what these little frogs with their little teacups got to say about you being here. I came to see Jesus. And as long as Jesus wants me, as long as Jesus is calling me, as long as Jesus knows who I am, tell your neighbor, forget the frogs. So it was this Mary that developed a relationship. You can tell the frogs I said it. Forget them. I said it was this Mary who developed a relationship with Jesus. And from that moment on, Mary and Martha and their brother Lazarus were like an extension of Jesus' family. Follow where I'm going with this. Everywhere that Jesus traveled, God provided for his needs, because remember, foxes have holes, birds have nests, but God had nowhere to lay his head. So Jesus literally depended on the grace of God and to move in people's hearts to take care of him everywhere that he went. So whenever he did revival in Bethany, it was Mary and Martha's house that Jesus laid his head and ate at their table. So they had intimacy with Jesus. They had a kinship with Jesus. They were like sisters to him. They were like extensions of the family. But what do you do when you are intimate with God, got relationship with God, you're close to Jesus, but he still don't do what you want? They sent Jesus an instant message. They inboxed him. They texted him. They tagged him. They at Jesus the Christ. Your friend Lazarus is sick. And they figured, we your favorite members. We baked you a cake at your anniversary. You stopped by our house. You had oxtails and rice at our house. So surely when we send you a message, you gonna come by. We got intimacy. I worshiped you. I praised you. I wiped up your feet with my hair. You know us. So when we text you, I know you gonna respond. How many of you have ever felt like your intimacy entitled you to an immediate reaction? Go ahead and be honest. God, I came to church 3 Sundays in a row. I know that's got to get me something. Lord, I was good this week. Lord, I wasn't as bad as I was last month. God, I've been tithing. I've been faithful. I've been serving. I've been doing a lot better than I used to. So, Lord, when I ask you to come, when I pray, it just seemed like you ought to show up for me. Understand where Mary and Martha were, because not only was this an emotional situation, but it was also some economic ramifications, because Lazarus was the man of the house. It didn't say nothing about Mary and Martha having a husband or anything like that. No father was present. So as the man in the house, Lazarus took care of his sisters. Well, I don't know where he worked, but I know that whatever Lazarus brought home, it was a blessing to Mary and Martha. So if Lazarus dies, if something happens to the man of the house, not only is it emotional for them, but their economy can suffer as well. So they sent Jesus a 911 text like, look here, your friend, your favorite member, Lazarus is sick, and we need you to come. But Jesus responds to them in verse 4. You would think that he would say, all right, I'm on the way. You would think that he'll say, you know, I'll be right there, don't y'all worry. He says in verse number 4, this sickness is not unto death. I can translate it to you. He said in so many words, he'll be all right. See, that hits a little bit home for you. He said, he'll be fine. This sickness is not under death. Nothing to worry about, nothing to stress about. Lord, Lord, your friend is sick. Jesus said, don't even worry about it. Lazarus will be okay. What do you do when it seems like Jesus is blowing you off? Lord, I'm suffering. You'll be all right. I'm going through. I'm in pain. I need to talk to you right now. He says, I'll be there. How do you feel when you bring your problems to people and it seems like they got other stuff to do? Your stuff was immediate. And then you rationalize your anger and your impatience because you thinking about all the times you was there for them. You running back all the tapes of all the time where they troubled you with their problems and you was there for them and you came through for them. But now that I need something, wish I had an honest crowd in here. He says to them, don't worry about it. He's going to be okay. And to make matters worse, verse 6 says, instead of making his way to them, he waits 2 more days and then head in another direction. Bethany is over here. 2 miles away, 15 furlongs, 2 miles away, right there. And Jesus said, brothers, let's go to Judea. The need is over here. Jesus and the boys head over there. Mary asked for deliverance. Jesus took a detour. Have you ever had Jesus to act outside of your expectations? And what makes you feel even worse is that you thought that because you and Jesus were tight, that he would come through for you. We're not talking about a random church member that don't hardly come. We're not talking about a non-tithing member that want their lights paid and ain't nobody seen them in 6 months. We ain't talking about the member that only show up to their mama's funeral, then we don't see them no more till their daddy die. We talking about folk that are faithful. But yet they didn't get the response that they wanted. What I come to tell you, and I'll bid y'all a good afternoon, is that God sometimes will tarry when you need him to hurry. It's going to be good. By the time Jesus got there, it was announced that Lazarus was dead. He had a funeral. He had a repast. He had a burial. And the text declares that he was 4 days stinking in the grave. I know you spiritual. I am too most days. I know you love the Lord. But what do you do when God don't meet your expectation? You prayed and your loved one still died. How you respond to that? You've been faithful and still don't graduate on time. You tithed and still don't have enough money to make it through the month. You did all you could to be faithful, but your intimacy did not cater to your expectations. What if I told you that it wasn't about you? You may not shout, but you're going to get something today. I said, what if I told you that it's not about you? Your problem is really not your problem. Your issue is really not your issue. What you're going through right now, believe it or not, is not about you, but God is using it so that he can get the glory and so that you can learn more about him. Because you know what? You wouldn't know what you know about God unless you went through what you went through. You can't testify that he's a provider unless you ran out of some stuff. and needed him to provide it. You don't know nothing about him being a doctor until you've been flat on your back sick. You don't know what it is to be a friend until all your other friends have walked away. You don't know what it is to be a battle axe in the time of battle until you've had some wars to fight. Is there anybody here that can testify? I wouldn't know what I know until I went through what I went through. Jesus told me to tell you, this problem is not about you. You're going through it so that God can get the glory. Remember, I said it's easy to announce it, but it's hard to accept it. Because you can tell yourself that, oh, I'm just going through this storm for the glory of God. But while you in them 45 verses, it don't feel good. You can go ahead and be honest about that. When I'm in the midst of it, you can tell me all you want to tell me. But right now, I'm only in verse 17 of my 45 verse experience. And I'm stuck in the middle of this thing. And right now, even though I got faith, it don't feel good. What I'm here to tell you is that when you're in the midst of that situation and you have prayed but have not gotten the deliverance you've asked for, that's when it's time to believe. That's when it's time to trust God. That's when it's time to have faith, because you won't learn what you need to learn until you go through. You can't have the glory without going through some grief. And so Jesus makes his way to the house. I'm just about done. And Lazarus is already 4 days dead. The mourners are at the house, and they're trying their best to comfort the family. And then here comes Jesus. Kind of just strolling in, looking around casually like, hey, y'all. And somebody came up to Martha and they said, Martha, Jesus out there. Jesus out there. Martha met him in the driveway. Hands on her hip. Neck rolling, fingers popping, eyes bugging out. Jesus, if you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. I don't care how spiritual you are. All of us have thought about getting God straight. Have I got 12 people that can be honest with me? I don't care how spiritual you are. Every now and then, you done said to yourself, Lord, if the Lord had just showed up when I wanted him to, if the Lord had just moved, this wouldn't be happening if the Lord had done what I asked him to do. But what I'm here to let you know, the sign of a true believer, if you want to know where you are with God at the moment, I'm here to tell you, it's when you are emotional, but then after your emotions, faith kicks in. I'm talking about Martha was in her feelings, man. Martha was hot. Martha was neck popping and eye rolling and finger snapping. But then you know what? In that same verse, her faith kicked in. She said, Jesus, I'm a little frustrated with you, but even now, I know that whatever you ask of God, he's able to do it. How many of y'all ever been in your feelings and then your faith kicked in? How many of y'all have ever been disappointed, but then God reminded you that he's still in control? God, I wish you to come through by now, but even now, I know that you're still able. It's the middle of the year, and I ain't met none of my goals yet, but God, I know that you're still able. I don't see no sign of no blessing. I don't see no way out. I don't see no glimmer of hope, but I just believe after I get out of my feelings, it's time to believe. And aren't you glad God allowed you that moment to be in your feelings? Because I'm telling you, sometimes that thing gets so frustrating and you need to vent and you need to just say whatever you got to say. And Jesus let Martha do all of that, but then her faith kicked in. She said, I know that whatever you ask of God, I know I can't demand nothing from God. I don't believe what the TV preacher said, that I can command healing from heaven. I can command prosperity. If that's the case, none of us would be struggling. Martha said, I don't believe that junk, but I do believe that whatever's in your will, whatever you ask of your Father on my behalf, I know that it can be done. But it's time to believe that. Jesus said, Martha, your brother will rise again. Now, again, I know you're spiritual. Know you love the Lord. I love the Lord too. But how many of you have ever heard a word from God, either from the pastor or from somebody that genuinely loves you, but when you heard the word, it was almost like an insult? Pastor, you're going to have to explain that one. I'm talking about when you going through and then somebody come up to you talking about a Bible verse. Y'all got to keep it real up in here. I'm a preacher, and sometimes I don't want to hear no Bible verse. Jesus rolled up talking about your brother will live again. How many of y'all have ever had somebody to try to give you the word, but at that moment and in that situation, you ain't feel like hearing no word? I'm at a funeral. I don't feel like hearing, let not your heart be troubled. I can't get enrolled in school. I don't want to hear, trust God. I'm about to lose my house. I don't want to hear, God will provide. You can't give me no more than that. My life is falling apart, and you talking about hold on to God's unchanging hand. I'm a preacher, and sometimes I be wanting folk to keep their sermons to themselves because sometimes I don't want no word. Sometimes I don't want to hear what Jesus is saying. But what you got to come to understand is that sometimes the word is exactly what you need. Because you may not understand it right now, but that word is a seed that gets planted in your spirit, and it hasn't taken root yet. But I'm telling you, somewhere around September the 15th, you're going to be going through something, and the word from July 27th going to kick back in your spirit. It's time to believe, because I'm giving it to you in advance. I'm telling you ahead of time. You got some hell on the way. You got some battles you're going to have to fight. You got some new demons that's waiting on you, but you better remember what was said a month ago. It's time to believe. Jesus dropped that verse on her, and she immediately kicked back with her common sense. She said, Jesus, I know that I will see my brother again. You know why she said that? Because as a Jew, she was a Jew. Martha was a Jew too. Mary was a Jew. Lazarus was a Jew. So they had training. They knew the word of God. They knew the law. So she knew that there was a resurrection. She knew that some glad morning when this life is over, all of the saints will be caught up to meet God in the air. She understood that. So when Jesus dropped this, you shall see him again, she went Bible on him and said, I already know about the resurrection, but that ain't what I'm talking about. Is that it was never about a principle. It was always about the person. Hear what I've been trying to get to. Thank you for your patience. He said, I am the resurrection and the life. I ain't talking about no hereafter. I ain't talking about no by and by when the morning come. I ain't talking about 2 wings to veil my feet and to veil my face and to fly away. No, I'm talking about what you're looking for. You looking at it. Don't miss the person and his power because you stuck on some principles. God said you got to see me as your source. You got to see me as everything you need. Some of us are too smart. We can't see Jesus when he's standing right in front of us. Don't you be guilty of being so intellectual that you miss the move of God in your life. Stop philosophizing everything. Stop making everything deeper than it's got to be. Sometimes what you need is right there in front of you. God say, I don't have what you need. I am what you need. I gotta go. Sometimes Christians are the hardest folk to convince. You would think that it would be the folk out there in the world that you have to convince. No, it's Christians. It's Bible readers. It's folk that come to church all the time that have the most trouble believing God. If you prayed for something, how is it that you're not acting like it's on the way? What did you spend an hour and a half in church for? Sweating, snotting, and crying. Oh, Lord, right now, Lord, in the name of Jesus. And then still leave here and ain't got no hope. If you don't believe that God can do, that's why Jesus asked her. He said, it don't matter what I say. The question is, do you believe it? When folks say that the Lord will bring you out, do you believe that? Because it ain't about whether I say it or if they sing it. Do you believe it? Because it's your belief that's going to determine what happens when you walk outside these doors. I'm telling you, God needs some people that are able to walk as if it's already done. It's not arrogance. It's just believing what God said to you. If God told you, then you need to pick your head up. You need to stop walking around here like you defeated. You need to stop acting like your life is over. I don't care if you hit a bump in the road. God said, though he were dead, yet shall he live. You got to start believing that God can do it. Somebody in here now, you've been walking around with this pride and you've been walking around defeated. God said you need to set your pride aside. You need to start trusting in me because you don't know what I'm going to do, but you better trust me in the meantime. Where are the people that's trusting God in the process? I'm only in verse 25, but I trust God. I don't know where the end is, but I believe I'll run on. I wish I had a witness and see what the end's going to be, because I believe something at the end is waiting for me. I'll close when I tell you that when Jesus met Mary in the middle of the road, he had already talked with Martha, got her straight. You'll see your brother again. I am the resurrection and the life. But then he met up with Mary. And he told her the same thing. You'll see your brother again. It's going to be all right. He already 4 days dead. But she had a group of Jews with her. And somebody asked the question, why were the Jews important? Can I teach before we shut it down? The Jews believed that when you died, your spirit kind of hovered over your body for about 3 days. They believe that. Other faiths believe that as well. When you die, your spirit just kind of hangs out for a little while and just hovers over your body. And then after those 3 days, it decides whether or not it want to come back or if it want to go on to glory or wherever that spirit is going. And so the Jews had this belief that when you died, you really wasn't dead until after 3 days. And so Mary had some Jews with her who believed just that. And so when Lazarus was dead 4 days. Y'all ain't got it? When Lazarus was dead 4 days, put in the grave to the point where he was stinking, the worms had already started working on him. The reason why Jesus let it go for 4 days is so that the people who had the 3-day theory, he could shut them down and make them believers. Come here. God said the reason he let your stuff get as bad as it got is so that when he brings you out, it will be no doubt who it was that made it happen. Is there anybody here that ever felt like you've been in it too long? God should have done moved by now. God should have done made a way by now. But I stopped by to tell you on my way to glory that the reason why you had to wait 4 days is so that all the doubters that's been hanging around you, all of the people that didn't think you were going to come back, when you do come forth, they ain't got no choice but to see the glory working in your life. Is there anybody here that's ever been down, not down to your last, but beyond your last? You had a dash before your money. You had red letters in your account, but thanks be to God, when he brought you out, you got a testimony that I was down, but he lifted me. I was dead, but he brought me back. I'm here to tell somebody there's some Jews out there that are watching you, and God wants you to let them know that it wasn't your degree that brought you out. It wasn't your money that brought you out. It wasn't your family that brought you out. But look at your neighbor and tell him it was nobody. Oh, Lord, I wish I had help in here. I said it was nobody but the Lord. So when they ask you how you graduated, when they ask you how you got your job, when they ask you how you survived, tell them I didn't survive it. Tell them I died and I came back. Somebody called me and I had to answer. It was Jesus that made a way for me. Jesus that fought my battle. So from now on, when I read my Bible and I hear Jesus say I am, I can stand up and I can testify. I can say yes, he is. Can I get a witness here? If Jesus says he's a healer, is there anybody here that can say yes, he is? If Jesus says I'm a provider, is there any broke person that can say yes, he is? If Jesus says I am a way maker, can anybody testify? Tell your neighbor, yes, he is. Can I get a witness here? Because he is the resurrection and the life. He fought a battle that you could not win. He fought off the demons. He fought off dilemmas. He fought off dysfunction. He fought off your diseases. But one Friday on Calvary's cross, he fought death on your behalf. They led him up Calvary's hills, stretched him wide, hung him high. He died. Great God, he died. They laid Jesus in a borrowed tomb. He still fought the battle. They laid him in Joseph's new tomb. Stayed in the grave all day Friday. All Friday night, stayed there all day Saturday and all Saturday night. But shake your neighbor's hand, tell him the end of the story. If you know him like I know him, tell him. Good God Almighty, I said, Sunday morning, he got up, said he got up out that grave, said all power is in my hand. I got power to pick you up, power to turn you around. I got power to bring you back, power to bring you up. Turn, 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 turn to one of your good neighbors. Can I turn up for my birthday? Shake your neighbor like it's your last time. Shake them like it's Sunday morning. Shake them like you love Jesus. Shake them like you're born again. Shake them like you're going to heaven. Shake them like your last time. Shake them and rock them. Rock them and shake them. Shake your neighbor's hand and tell them, neighbor, I don't look like what I've been through. I don't look like the fight I've been in. It's been hell, but I'm still here. It's been hard, but I'm still here. Say I, say I.
Yes, he will. Yes, he will. I say yes, he will. Is there anybody here made up your mind? I believe God. No matter what it looks like, I believe God. No matter how I feel, I believe God. Shake one more neighbor. Got to get up out of here. Shake one more neighbor. Grab him by the hand. Shake your neighbor like y'all grew up together. Shake your neighbor like you used to shoot hooky together. Shake your neighbor like you play Nintendo together. Shake your neighbor's hand and tell them these words. Tell them, I don't know what you're going through, but it's time to believe. Tell them weeping may endure for a night, but joy,